and that's not realistic right now. So, that's what they do. I mean, you try to work with those projects that actually pay, and then, you keep at it. But I can tell you that a number of these folks, they will prefer to just have one guy in some rented office knocking on the door of PDVSA as a job every 2 days to see if they get paid, rather than completely leaving the country, because that's just not the way business is done. But certainly not in the biggest oil patch. So I guess that's from the debt perspective how most of the folks see it.
Beth, there's a couple questions here. They're very specific, but first, I'll give you the chance to weigh in on more on this. If you want to add something to the sanctions, what are we looking at? What sort of, you referred to the interagency process. Mm-hmm. Could you actually, because I'm not sure if everyone here maybe understands that, so help explain what that is, why it's important in this case, and then I'll add a third piece to that, and what kind of financial, and not just sanctions, but money that the government, the U.S. would put on the table, this kind of debt forgiveness, asking other partners around the world to forgive certain credits or what have you.
So I can describe certainly the sanctions process, and then a little bit what we've done in the past with some other countries. Okay. Although I have to say the size of this one is really unprecedented. So, I mean, you can look at Ukraine a few years ago, which had a similar debt to Russia in the gas sector. And there's a few other examples, but they're a lot smaller. But anyway, and you can look at the Argentina debt crisis, but again, you had an unwilling partner and it stretched out for 15 years about. So, there isn't an exact corollary to that one. But just to go over the sanctions process, there's a White House-led process. That will not surprise you. The interagency gets together and they talk about options. The main implementers of sanctions are the Treasury Department, the Commerce Department to some extent, if it's a licensing kind of option, and the State Department. The kind of sanctions that we've done, some have been financial. The regime that we kind of ended up rolling out, and which I think David actually tracked kind of nicely, started with individuals. Yeah. We went after individuals first, using some existing authorities, actually under the Kingpin legislation, which was really targeted at large drug traffickers. Again, I think that's another aspect of the Venezuelan economy that we need to think about, is that it's an oil state. It's also a narco state.
Yeah, Raul made that point.
Yeah. So, and maybe we'll talk about it a lot here, but when you're talking about where are they getting, how are they staying afloat? It's a narco state, it's an oil state, although increasingly less so, and they have gold as well that they've been trafficking in and selling. That's kind of what's going on right now. So we have been focusing on the narco aspect to some extent. We've then, moved on with other sanctions on individuals in the government. The first energy-related sanction we did was actually on a PDVSA board member. And then the financial sanctions were the other kind of the ones that came after that. Since then, we've zeroed in more on the energy space and petroleum in particular. And what we focused on there has been just U.S. people, entities cannot interact with PDVSA, essentially. That's been the real binding constraint. Right. And then the other constraint we haven't talked about yet is the inability of the U.S. to provide diluents of U.S. persons and companies to provide diluents to PDVSA. And that is, again, they have extremely heavy sour crude. Doesn't move through pipes very well unless you dilute it, and you have to use usually a diluent. You can use another oil, which is, I think, probably what they're doing a bit of now.